حقيقة صادمة تكشفها كبرى الشاشات الأمريكية. الإعلامي الشهير تاكر كارلسون يصاب بالذهول بعد سماعه لهذه الحقائق من قس مسيحي عن مكانة المسيح عيسى في الإسلام. كيف قام المسلمون برعاية وإعادة بناء أقدس كنائس المسيحيين 3 مرات بدون فرض أي ضرائب؟ وما هي الحقيقة المخفية عن الاضطهاد الذي يواجهه مسيحي الأرض المقدسة اليوم؟
Muslim rulers didn't tax churches during the Ottoman period. They were very kind to Christians. They took care of our holy sites. They had a law protecting Christian pilgrims.
The Muslim rulers of the Holy Land rebuilt the Church of the Holy Sepulchre 3 times.
3 times. It's been the Islamic authorities who've had control in that region, that because of the Islamic view of Jesus, they've actually been quite kind.
What is the Islamic view of Jesus?
They're actually quite fond of him. They believe that Jesus was sent by God, that he was of God, that he said true things, that he performed real miracles, and that he's actually coming again.
Muslims believe Jesus is coming again?
They do.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Tucker Carlson just interviewed J.D. Hall, a Christian pastor that proceeded to inform Tucker about Jesus, peace be upon him, in Islam, and how well Muslims treated Christians in the Holy Land, as well as how Muslims protected and maintained Christian places of worship, in contrast to the hardships Christians have suffered at the hands of the Israelis. Let us watch the first clip.
You and I both know that Christians are not treated well in Israel at all.
No, they're not. In fact, they're the subject of a lot of hostility and in a lot of cases violence. And it's interesting how many Christians were expelled from their lands and their homes in 1948 with the foundation of the formation of the State of Israel.
Well, the church there is still having their property confiscated to this day for settlement. You know, with the Orthodox Church, Israel closed their bank or froze their bank account because they didn't pay their tax. It was a tax that they just suddenly threw on them. All this time, they've not had to pay that tax. Israel throws it on them. They couldn't afford it because it was years' worth, and they confiscated their bank account and threatened to take their property. The Ottomans didn't charge churches tax. And so when the Ottomans were in control of the Promised Land for 400 years, in the millet system, they didn't charge churches tax. Israel started just a few years ago. And, so that Christians have pressure applied to them. I mean, native believers, the ones whose churches have been there longer than Israel has been a state, they're the ones that are facing the pressure that it's very hard to get Christians in America to care about at all.
And their Muslim rulers didn't do that during the Ottoman period.
Okay, so the answer is no. The Muslim rulers didn't tax churches during the Ottoman period. They were very kind to Christians. As a matter of fact, they took care of our holy sites. They had rebuilt, Islamic authorities rebuilt the Church of the Sepulchre 3 different times over the centuries. They had a law protecting Christian pilgrims on their journey. Like nobody messed with the pilgrims.
The Ottoman Turks, the Muslim rulers of the Holy Land, rebuilt the Church of the Holy Sepulchre 3 times?
3 times, yeah. Either completely rebuilt it or a major renovation. One time it caught on fire and they redid the roof. But if you've seen the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, you can imagine what it took to redo that.
No, it's enormous and decaying. Sadly, it's an amazing place.
Some of the opposition to the Zionist project in Great Britain in the 1940s was on account of the Muslim authorities having taken such good care of our Christian sites that it was a bit of a gamble to let Jewish authorities do that.
Tucker and his guest were in agreement that Christians are not treated well in Israel whatsoever, with them being regularly subjected to hostility and violence. Tucker correctly referred to the expulsion of Arab Christians from their lands and homes upon the formation of Israel in 1948, which is something Muslims also experienced. JD made the shocking claim that up until this day, Christians are still having their property seized by illegal Israeli settlers, leaving them homeless, as well as the Israelis enforcing overinflated taxes on Christian churches, and then freezing bank accounts because those Christians were unable to pay up a ridiculously large amount of money made up out of thin air. As JD said, in contrast, during 400 years of Ottoman Muslim rule and under Sharia, Muslims did not tax Christian churches and instead protected Christian pilgrims and were very kind to Christians, even taking care of Christian places of worship to the point that Islamic rulers rebuilt one of the holiest sites in Christianity 3 different times over the centuries, much to Tucker's surprise. JD even claimed that this kind treatment from Muslims was the reason why some Christians opposed the corrupt British Zionist colonial project to form Israel in the first place, because they feared they would be oppressed under Jewish rule. Let's watch the next clip where they discuss the Islamic view of Prophet Jesus, peace be upon him.
You know, I've heard people say if it wasn't for Israel, we wouldn't be able to go visit our holy sites. There wouldn't even be holy sites anymore. And it's like, who do you think has been taking care of them this whole time? It's been the Islamic authorities who've had, you know, control in that region, that because of the Islamic view of Jesus, they've actually been quite kind to the holy sites in the region.
What is the Islamic view of Jesus?
Well, I don't want to say that Muslims have a high view of Jesus. The reason is because Jesus is not fictional. Jesus is real. Jesus of Nazareth is a real biological person. To this day, he still exists. He's in heaven. He's not here. But they're actually quite fond of him. And so they believe that Jesus was sent by God, that he was of God, that he said true things, that he performed real miracles, and that he's actually coming again. That doesn't make them Christians. It doesn't mean
Muslims believe Jesus is coming again?
They do. As a prophet, not as the Messiah, but they believe in his return.
So there's been an effort to propagandize American Christians on this question in churches as well?
Yeah, I don't know how official it is, but it's when you listen to Christians talk about Islam, they'll say things like, well, we've got to maintain good relationships with Israel because Islam and Christianity are natural enemies. Well, I'm not saying that we're not. I'm not saying that Islam and Christianity have ever had any kind of partnership, but honestly, it's Rabbinic Judaism and Christianity that historically has been at odds. It's the idea that Christians and Jews have gotten along this whole time and that we have to band together to protect ourselves against the Muslims is a very recent notion. This wasn't something that was ever posited like before the 20th century. That part is brand new. And it comes from, you know, the Jewish talking points that you see on the television and the news constantly.
So it's a political construct that's been accepted as a theological reality by American Christians.
I would say that's the case. There's so much crossover between what is political and what is theological when it comes to Israel that sometimes it's really hard to determine what is theological propaganda and what is political propaganda.
Yes.
JD claimed the reason why the Muslim authorities looked after Christians and their holy sites was because of the positive Islamic view of Jesus, peace be upon him. And if we look at the Jewish view of Jesus, which is very negative to say the least, in fact is blasphemous to both Islam and Christianity, it might explain why the Israelis are so cruel to Christians. I'm surprised Tucker didn't know the Islamic stance on Jesus, peace be upon him, and I think he was pleasantly surprised to find out. I disagree with JD's claim that Muslims don't have a high view of Jesus simply because we don't believe him to be God, and instead honour him as a great prophet. This is because Islamically we consider assigning partners with God as being a sin, which is something Jesus, peace be upon him, also said in both the Quran and the Bible. However, JD was correct in stating that Muslims are very fond of Jesus and that we believe him to be a messenger of God that spoke the truth and performed miracles, and that he will physically return from heaven to earth to defeat the Antichrist, much to Tucker's surprise once again. I do have to correct JD once again, as he wrongly claimed Muslims don't consider Jesus to be the Messiah. Facts are that that Muslims actually do believe Jesus, peace be upon him, to also be the Messiah, similar to how Christians do, as I just explained. Tucker was correct when he said American Christians and also Westerners in general have been propagandized to not know the similarities between Muslims and Christians. And JD confirmed this by pointing out how some uninformed Christians think they have to align with Israel to combat Islam, when in fact historically Judaism and Christianity have been at odds due to the Jewish belief that Jesus is in hell and his mother Mary did not conceive him from a virgin birth and instead was a promiscuous woman. Astaghfirullah. Whereas Muslims do believe in the virgin birth, and we even have a whole chapter in the Quran dedicated to Mary, may Allah be pleased with her, because we regard her as the best of all women. JD and Tucker both agreed that this notion of Christians and Jews needing to band together against Muslims is a very recent Jewish Israeli propaganda concept designed to achieve their sinister and bloody political objectives in Muslim countries. I honestly do think if Tucker Carlson read the Quran properly with an open heart, there is a possibility he would become Muslim. But nevertheless, it was a great interview, and I hope it brings some much needed awareness about what Muslims actually believe. Thank you for watching. Until next time, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
في الختام يتضح لنا أن نور الحقيقة لا يمكن حجبه، وأن الإسلام كان وسيظل دين العدل والرحمة الذي يحفظ الحقوق. إذا نال هذا الفيديو إعجابكم وأضاف إلى معلوماتكم، فلا تبخلوا علينا بالدعم عبر الضغط على زر الإعجاب والاشتراك في قناة فيرا.